His life has affected thousands of persons through the contribution to the theater in the past several decades. Both performer and audience have experienced innovations that have had lasting effects. Dramatist Paul Baker and his wife Kitty join us on this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. Stay with us.
This is Austin Faith Dialogue, a public affairs program discussing the important crossroad of religion in life, produced by Austin Metropolitan Ministries in cooperation with KTBC TV. Austin Faith Dialogue highlights the interaction of the religious community with the social and cultural issues throughout our area. Now, today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for this edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. For the past several minutes, I've had the opportunity to be visiting with Paul and Kitty Baker, but before introducing you to them, let's take a moment to hear more about the Bakers' contribution to the theater. During the Second World War, Paul Baker was stationed in Iceland as a special entertainment officer at one end of a Quonset hut. A new life began there of entertainment that took on a depth not yet seen in theater. With the revolutionary performance of Othello, Baker Theater was attributed as one of the most progressive in the world. Other productions followed, each with a unique contribution to the art. In the beginning, God Created was a performance of passages of the King James Version of the Bible. Children in Wonderland was presented with the assistance of Kitty Baker, where children from their neighborhood participated. Hamlet was presented in 1956, unique with the multi-sided and multi-staged Hamlet, distinguished actor Burgess Meredith being in the title role. Journey to Jefferson won a special jury prize at the 1964 Theater of Nations in Paris, France. Of Time in the River began a direction in the Paul Baker Theater experience that would continue to develop until this day. With the use of 5 actors to play the 5 senses, the production was a tremendous success. And joining me here today are Paul and Kitty Baker. And I want to say to you, it's just a great honor to have you in our presence here and in Austin for this this remembering of your career and of some of your recent work. So, Paul, welcome. Kitty.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
I'd like to say that my first remembrance or awareness of your work occurred, I think it was back in the 1950s. I remember looking at an article in Life magazine that talked about your work in Baylor. And
yes.
You're starting the Dallas Theater Company back at that time. Just give us a little bit of a sense of how it all got started and where it's come since.
Well, starting about 1952, we made a trip to Paris. We took about 25 students over, and while we were over there, we studied, they went to the Louvre in the afternoon and studied for a month and a half, and I had a secretary, and we went through the modern museums in Paris, and I looked at all the contemporary painters like Picasso and Braque and Leger, and borrowed ideas from them, and came back and incorporated them starting in 1952 in Othello and in Hamlet, as Picasso could use 3 faces of a character in one picture.
Oh, I see.
Then I used 3 sides of a part of Hamlet or Othello.
Kind of a cubistic theater experience.
What's that?
A cubistic
That's right, cubistic. So I tried to borrow, I looked at a contemporary painting, and our secretary and I, she wrote down how I would get that particular picture on the stage. Mm-hmm. And then we took all of those ideas, which were hundreds and hundreds of them, and my wonderful group of people I work with, Gene McKinney and Virgil B. was a designer and movement coach and so forth. And we talked about these for maybe 6 months and then developed Othello, trying to break every rule that is usually used in the theater. Trying to break them all and change the whole relationship of the actor to the audience, and to break out the proscenium and get rid of that. We had a very experimental theater with swivel chairs, so that stage was completely around, and the actors moved and the audience moved with the actors.
Oh, I see.
All the way around.
So it was
that was
innovative
Studio One at Baylor. Yeah, that was Studio One at Baylor.
Well, now, this was a studio at Baylor, and then I was noticing, Kitty, about your contribution in regard to children's work.
Because our children were at the age that needed an activity, I started a group of just neighborhood children to go over and do a few games, theatrical exercises in the theater on Saturday mornings that was later taken over by graduate students who wanted to produce a play.
I see. And this was in
so
Waco?
This was the beginning, very beginning of what was the Baylor Teen and Youth Theater.
I see, which is still in existence.
I think it's interesting that our daughter now has a wonderful children's theater, Robin Flatt, in Dallas, called the Dallas Children's Theater Incorporated.
Oh.
She plays to 120,000 people a year.
Oh, my word.
And she's very, very busy. It's a very good children's theater, so it's kind of grown.
Right.
Yeah.
And you made a movement toward Dallas in terms of carrying some of these ideas into the city.
And our other daughter is teaching in Denver in a children's in middle school. She's theater coordinator.
Okay.
In a middle school in Denver.
So it's living on in the family
So theater continues to be,
tradition, right?
be an occupation.
Let's just focus for a minute on the experience that you took to Dallas. That involved the Dallas Theater Center. as I
Yeah, well,
understand.
that was really a group of Dallas art aficionados came down and talked to me, and they wanted to start a theater in Dallas. And I said, well, if we can move what we have here partially up there and get a good building. So Frank Lloyd Wright was the designer of the building, and we built the Dallas Theater Center, yeah. And,
so you worked with Wright on that architecture.
for about 3 years, yeah.
Well,
It's quite an experience.
we could have a program just on that.
Yeah.
But what was different about that emphasis at the center from what dramatic productions were going on otherwise?
Well, the difference was that this was a professional theater. This was one of the beginning and resident theater movement across America, and we were among the first to start a resident theater. Not the first, but among the first. And we paid our actors, and we had a graduate school of acting. We also had a children's theater there, but we had full-time people. I thought, growing out of Baylor, that you develop all these people, they don't have any place to go. So at one time, when we left there were 70 people on the payroll, and the company was about 35 or 40 actors. So they were all paid. There was a paid group. So in other words, to move from a college to a professional theater is what I think had to happen.
Okay.
And I believe that our contemporary resident theater should also have a school. They should have a children's theater. They should serve the community, not alone on the professional side, but on several other sides.
Well, that sounds like a rather holistic view
Yes,
of
it is.
drama.
It really is.
That you're not just having your stage in one corner of the world, but that you're reaching out in a kind of creative way. And I know, Kitty, isn't it true that you later were winding up in San Antonio? How did that come about?
Well, that's because we left Baylor after the production of Long Day's Journey into Night, and 14 of us left Baylor and we went to Trinity University, where
They built us a beautiful
Dr.
theater,
Lowry
gorgeous
was
theater.
very enthusiastic, built a new theater.
And the whole staff went together down to
Okay. So the Long
13
Day's
of
Journey created something of a controversy.
a controversy
Okay.
with a number of conservative people, Baylor people.
Okay. Well, that
And
was
they-
to Trinity's
they
game.
wanted to censor our plays, and we said we could not be censored.
Oh, I
And
see.
so we left because we would not allow them to censor our plays.
Well, now, when you came to Trinity, was there some new wrinkles in your career at that point?
Yeah, when we came to Trinity, we built a very experimental theater. It's still there. It's a gorgeous theater. It's a theater with revolving chairs that move and stages all the way around. And unfortunately, the program at Trinity in drama has not had much emphasis from the administration there since we left and since Dr. Lowry left. But at least the theater is still there.
I see.
Every now and then they have a play.
But you brought in some impetus for new facilities.
Well, I think what happened, well, they didn't have any theater when we came. They built the whole theater because we came. And we had 5 majors in speech and drama when we went there, and when we left there, about 125 majors with a whole the entire school and town was involved in children's theater and the programs. We brought professional theater down from Dallas to play there, along with the college performances.
Okay, so that was bringing from the past into that particular present, and now coming into this present moment.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask Kitty to tell us where you folks are now.
Well, now we've been, of course, on a ranch and retired, and we work.
Whereabouts is that?
We're a welder we are 5 miles outside of a little town called Welder, Texas.
Uh-huh.
And we have worked with the schools there, trying to improve the task scores and learning abilities of some of those children, trying to use the arts and use the talents that the children already possess, to give them an emphasis to learn and a desire to learn, and a greater pleasure in trying to apply their own talents to learning math, science, through the arts.
So that's the Welder, by the way, is just south of Austin, isn't it?
Welder,
70 miles down the road.
Welder is a little over 700 population, a student body of about 220.
And that's where you've retired to.
Well, we retired to a ranch outside Welder. We didn't retire
We
to
do
Welder.
not live in Welder.
All right. You're on the outskirts.
Yeah.
We're on the outskirts, definitely very outskirts.
We're 5 or 6 miles out, yeah.
Well, now, one of the things that I recall, too, is that while you were in Dallas, you were involved with the schools there as well. What was that connection?
That's right. The superintendent and I were old friends, and we talked about getting the arts into the schools for years. And Nolan Estes, and when they had to do they had to do magnet schools because that was the way they were going to desegregate back in 1976. He asked me to organize an arts magnets high school, which I did. I organized and employed the faculty and redid an old black high school, which is a marvelous old school, the George Washington, the Booker T. Washington High School, and hired people in all of the arts and academics, had a complete school. Yeah.
So it was based on that experience that you've now transferred this to a more rural setting.
That's right. And then that idea, that concept worked so well at the school. I guess is one of the great performing arts schools in America, high schools, and that whole idea. We had taught this idea in college and in graduate school and in professional theater and children's theater, but we never applied it to secondary and elementary school. And so we have written a book to describe that activity.
Okay.
For the first time, the academic was only 1/5. One cluster was academic, and the other 4 clusters were dance and visual art and drama and music.
I think in the second half of our program we'll come to the book that you've written and more about the connection of the arts in the schools. I'd like to, just while we're thinking about your career as a whole, though, take note of the fact that Burgess Meredith was in one of your productions, and it seems to me Charles Lawton was a friend of yours.
Charles Lawton came in and worked with us many times, over the years. One of our very good friends.
Well, for those of us who are just looking at theater world from the outside, this bespeaks that not only was your work well known, but that you were in a kind of creative relationship with some of the fine artists of our time, and had them help you in your teaching.
Oh yeah, Lawton became very excited over the Othello production, and he got Burgess very excited about coming down and working with us. And so over the years, Lawton came in and worked with us on Bible readings and on plays and on interpretation, whenever he could get. In fact, he produced a play called Major Barbara on Broadway with Burgess Meredith in it and Cornelia Otis Skinner, a lot of important actors. And he liked, when we were doing a new version of Hamlet, which he had not seen, he brought the entire cast down. He closed the play one night and brought the entire play cast down to see the production.
Is that right? Well, we're going to just have to close down here for a minute or two before we continue with Austin Faith Dialogue. After this break, rejoin us, please.
Serving Austin means serving you. Each day, Austin Metropolitan Ministries is religion in action, providing affordable housing, caring for the elderly, marching against hunger, and much more. AMM promotes understanding, cooperation, and social involvement. So when we ask for your help, we're really asking to help you, Austin. To find out how you can help Austin Metropolitan Ministries help Austin through its member organizations, just call 472-7627.
Welcome back to Austin Faith Dialogue. Making Sense with Five Senses has been written in an effort to prove that the arts are essentials to the education today. What was the purpose in writing Making Sense of the Five Senses? To tell us that are Paul and Kitty Baker, who are here to give us the expression not only of drama but the arts in a larger sense as it applies in education. What makes sense out of Making Sense for us?
Well, of course, everybody has five senses if they're fairly normal. And everybody uses the five senses every day. They use their eyes, their nose, their ears, their tongue with taste, and they use their skin all over for touch and muscle memory. All the teachers do the same thing. The teachers all use their five senses.
So now this is just to help the students become aware of this and learn not only drama or art, but Kitty, I mean, you mentioned in other fields.
The teachers learn their own abilities and how they use their senses so that when they are teaching with an artist assisting a child, they begin to classify and find out what are the strengths of that child. So rather than just teach or give a definite lesson plan, lay it on the student, they try to use the strength of the child and teach to their strengths, and get the child to expand from one strength to another.
Now you're talking about having an artist work with the teachers?
Well, I think the big thing
Yes,
is...
the artist must work with the teacher to help identify what the strengths of each child is.
Okay.
The main idea of the book is what we have really, what we have moved, we found out down there in the experiment that both at the Arts Magnet and at the Welder Independent School District, at the elementary school, is that they must have an artist working in the elementary school with the kids, and the artist does not work in a separate room teaching, say, art or music or dance. They take the lesson plan. They decide what the lesson plan is from the teacher, the academic teacher. And then with the academic teacher, they see how through movement or through dance and movement or through visual arts or through music, how they can get the child to experience that, the main topic, the main theme of that lesson plan. Like in the TOS scores, they have sequencing, and each of them teaches sequence. They sequence in dance, sequence in music, sequence in art, sequence in clay and ceramics. So we have 4 art teachers in that little bitty school, and 2 are part-time and 2 are full-time. But they work directly with the teacher, and that's the difference with this. That's the difference philosophy, which we have found out works. And I think this will work in any school. These kids' grades have improved tremendously.
Yes, I was going to ask about that.
Because they find where the child's strength is. It may be over here in the visual. It may be in movement. It may be in sound. And then all of them talk about it, and they teach to that particular talent.
Kitty, tell us about the results of it. It's not the TOS test and otherwise, how that plays out?
Well, the results would be easily observed if you go to the school and you find that teachers are talking to each other and the artists are talking about lesson plans and everyone is excited and the children are having fun. They're enjoying learning and they're proud of they also put these words, we call it the sensory vocabulary, line, color, space, sound, rhythm, and so forth above the blackboard, above the alphabet on the blackboard. And if a student shows great strength in rhythm, the teacher calls attention to that fact and maybe hangs his name on a little star below that poster, so that the child goes home and is proud. His self-image is improved.
Now, is this related to what you did in Dallas with the magnet school
Yeah,
there?
the magnet school, we sort of experimented with the whole idea that actually all of the arts have used the same vocabulary. They made, music may use it a little different than visual arts, but they all have the same vocabulary. And then we had the academic teachers all take that vocabulary and see if they use it. We found that the academic teachers, Kitty's a math teacher, we found that they have much of the basic vocabulary in each of the academic subjects. So why not use this basic vocabulary to unify knowledge and to teach these and to give everybody a common language?
Okay.
So that's what the book is about.
Well, what we'd like to give the folks who are joining us today a way of learning more about this,
Yes.
and both what you've done in Welder and what was done in Dallas. There is an address that we're going to have shown here at Paul Baker Enterprises, Route 1, Box 139, Welder, Texas. I think that if anyone would like to be in touch with you that way, that will be the ways and means that they can do that.
We published the book ourselves, and we're selling the book ourselves. So if they want to reach us, we'd be very happy, yeah.
Okay. I'd like to also take note of the fact that insofar as Austin Faith Dialogue is coming to the community here from an interfaith perspective, that we are affirming, among other things, within the Christian tradition, the incarnation as a faith that's very closely related to the senses.
Yes.
The Word made flesh is in all 5 senses.
Yeah.
And this is something which I know from our chance to talk previously, Paul, that you've had commitments in the religious community and Kitty over the period of time, going back to the time, I guess, since you were a preacher's kid.
The preacher's child.
Yeah, tell us about that.
And there was 5 in my family, and I was the youngest. And we had a little church in West Texas, Hereford, Texas, 40 miles beyond Amarillo. And our house was sort of the community center. It was a very small church. And the reason I'm in theater is because we always performed and read for everybody who came. We had to make our own fun.
Yeah.
So that's how I've never not been in the theater. I've been in the theater all of my life.
That was in the days before television. Paul.
That's right, before radio, before airplanes. In fact, we had a horse and buggy. We didn't have a car.
Okay.
So that was way back, 1911, 12, 13, 14. And we had a glorious life. We had a wonderful life.
Your dad was a Presbyterian
minister,
no less.
So help me God, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And a good one, a very good one, a real pastor.
And what has been your experience along this line, Kitty?
Well, my experience growing up in Virginia was more or less in a very small Baptist church. And as he said, growing up at a time when you played outside and you used rocks for little automobiles, or you used the roots of a tree for your playhouse, and you used your imagination. You didn't have the advantage of going into a store and picking out ready-made toys.
Well, I think that one of the things that has occurred to me is, in both your cases, is long on imagination. I'm reminded of someone who said recently that she enjoys radio more than television because the pictures are better.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes, the pictures are better.
And that the imagination is brought into play in the church setting in this regard, as you took like in Hereford, Texas, what is suddenly another world.
That's right.
As you were growing up. And that the church has always had this connection with drama. I mean, going back into the, at least into the Middle
Oh,
Ages.
yes. Well,
Do you see that
oh, yes,
as
very basic.
inspiring?
And I would
Right.
I would say that our church prospered. One reason because all the children in the church and so forth, we all took part in these activities together. And it was a wonderful. We still have friends, deep, great friends that we still stay. My sisters and brothers stay in contact with. It worked with us way back there. They're getting pretty old now, but they,
Yeah. But that was those were the roots.
yeah, that was no question about it. Yeah.
And you know, one of the other things that I have been impressed with is how what you've been involved with is not just doing or making art,
Yeah.
but you're creating community.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think the arts ought to be a vital part of every community, and that's the thing I've worked on all my life. I think they ought to be a leader in setting a lot of the spiritual qualities of a community, and they are. And if they would put arts in the school, if these so-called bureaucrats would really have arts in the school, they'd find that the whole spiritual quality of our education would change.
Okay. I think the thing I recall too is how I read a little bit of your book that the young folks in Dallas who were just marginal or maybe on the verge of dropping out and so on suddenly became honor scholars. They became national merit winners. And, and Kitty, did you see that transformation?
There was at the beginning of the Arts Magnet High School. We were the percentage of presidential scholars and merit scholars for that school seemed to be much larger than that for the other schools that had more money and were.
And they only had 600 students, and they were they were high school with 3,000 students, and the Arts Magnet had more merit scholars and more presidential scholars, and got more. They got over 1 million, a couple of million, and scholarships to all the schools, big schools in America because of their quality.
And somehow this had to do with bringing the young people together, working cooperatively and creatively in the arts.
Using the same idea that we're using. It's written up in this book. Yes.
Okay.
And the academics did not suffer. That's the important thing.
The academics get better.
They get
stimulate.
better.
Stimulates them.
It stimulates them more to have a more.
Well, I'd like to just take note of the fact here, this making sense with the 5 senses, and that the address that I gave a while ago, I was not sure. I put in the zip code on that.
That's 78959 is the zip code.
Okay, and Welder, W-A-E-L-D-E-R, Texas. Okay. Well, I think this is one way to share the good news that you found really effective results both in the schools, and I suspect this would have uses in the religious community as well. And it may be that we'll have a chance to come back to a program at a later time about just exactly what this could mean for the church.
Yeah, we'd love that.
We'd like
to do that. Yeah.
And we'd like to thank you all for being here today, very much so. It's our joy and pleasure to have visited with you and to have had you folks join us in Austin Faith Dialogue. Be with us again next week as we continue our journey into faith here in Austin, Texas, and in the greater Central Texas region. I'm Richard Thompson, and peace be with you.
Call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 472-7627.